Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of the SYNCARU build. In this episode, we'll be taking you through the last part of the welding off of all the brackets of the SYNCARU subframe, and then we bolt that subframe up under the vehicle, hopefully for the very last time. So that differential is now hung in the vehicle, and we're about to show you that. And then after that, we'll show you the radius rods. So because we're taking the SYNCARU subframe that we've built down the bottom where the lower control arm is, and where the radius rod comes off, it doesn't match up to the radius rod bracket of the two-wheel drive. There's a mismatch. So we have to obviously work that out. So we take you through the process in this episode of how we do that, how we cut and join, just to get a solid model basically of how that radius rod will work. So we take you through that in this episode. And the last thing in this episode is we assemble the reduction gearboxes for the very first time. And that's pretty exciting for us because, you know, I've said a couple of times we've waited almost 2 years for that, or for this project to come to fruition. So it's pretty exciting. And in the upcoming episodes, we've got a episode where we'll swap out the 5-speed dual range transmission, Subaru transmission. We'll swap that out and we'll install the 5AAT transmission, which is a 5-speed electronic automatic transmission Subaru out of a Turbo Liberty or a Turbo Legacy if you're in America, so that's exciting. And actually the episode just not too far after that, we'll be showing you our attempt to install diff lockers into the vehicle behind me. So we've got locked diffs for more serious four-wheel driving. So look, there's a whole heap coming up, so I hope you enjoy, and yeah, catch you in the episodes. So we're just making the differential brackets. So that's the bracket we've come up with, welded top and bottom. So here's a quick video just to show the offset bracket. That will take our flipped diff cover, the R160 or the R180 flipped differential cover, and put it in the perfect spot in the SYNCARU subframe. So I've just taken a few quick measurements of that and sent it off, and it's been CAD drawn up, ready for production, so we can make some more of these brackets easily. It'll be laser cut and folded, 6mm or 1/4 inch steel. With the plumb line in place, you can see that the differential is now centered, and we've got packers underneath just so there's definitely clearance. And now we'll start making the little legs that go from that bush down to the frame, and over this side the same, that bush down to the frame. So that's the first leg so far. The hole saw just marks the curve, and then this goes down here, that'll get welded across the bottom. So that's the shape I come up with. We'll just see how that goes. So we're getting pretty close now. I'll finish that off in the belt sander. Same again for this side now. We'll be making legs from here down to this frame. And I think we're about there. So it goes up there like that. See where it goes down there. So the legs are in, that's one side, and then this side. And then the back are in too. There's the front bars we've put in. So we're just tacking them in place at the moment. So as we've been mentioning, they were always going to go there and then straight out to the spare wheel support cross member. So we've just welded one side in, and now we're going to get onto this one here. But we're pretty excited. This is the first look at the subframe out of the vehicle, which is pretty much how it will be We can still get rid of these parts. We're leaving these for the protection rails, but that's pretty much what it will look like. And this will all be 3D scanned and CAD drawn, obviously, and then manufactured. So it's all been welded off. Now it's time to make the boxed parts. So that's the piece we've come up with. Make it a little bit prettier. So we thought we'd get a bit fancy rather than just ugly, square, boxed in, boring brackets. So the front brackets are officially done. That's the smaller front differential brace bracket, now fully completed. So I made a jig, and the reason I made a jig is because, and I don't know if you call it a jig in your country, I'm not sure, but what we call it here in Australia is a jig, and it is a frame that allows you to make something or reproduce something the same every single time. So you can see there I've got a tube welded in for this main frame. I've got another tube here welded in. These are the support brackets for the protector bars for the tail shaft. Your tail shaft or your diff pinion's there, your tail shaft comes out here. And that just allows us, when we get these brackets laser cut, these tubes allow us to put a bolt through the bracket first, and then we can weld it directly to the frame. So it essentially just makes sure everything aligns exactly the same every single time. Same here, we've got a tube through there, welded to here. We've got a tube here, welded to this. That's for our bracket that goes into the T3 standard lower control arm bracket. And then this is where the actual Syncro arm will come out. We've got another tube so that when we get this bracket laser cut and this part of the bracket laser cut, we put a bolt through the bracket and the tube, and then we know that the bracket will sit in the correct spot every time. All right, so that's the final product. I'll just show you quickly because this isn't really part of the build. It might be a bit boring for some people, but these represent the laser cut brackets, or the holes for the laser cut brackets for the prop shaft protection bar. This is the cutout for the diff pinion, which is that V that we cut out. And then these ones here, that's the front differential bracket. These are the lower control arms where the Syncro arms will bolt. These are the, will represent the holes for the T3 lower control arm bracket, and these are the rear differential bushes, which are back here, these big guys. All right, so here's the finished pieces. This one here would tuck in under there, and then you'd butt it up against that 60mm front bar there. And then in the actual jig, it goes, you'd flip it upside down because that's the way the jig works. And then once that 60mm bar goes in the front there, and then these laser cut brackets go in here with the correct lengths, this can only then sit in one spot. You can't get it wrong, literally can't get it wrong. So that's that. And then, as you can see, I've cut those two pieces too for here. And I'm gonna switch this car off because I'm getting gassed out. That's a bus we've just finished. This is the other side of the business. This is the business that we had running before Reversaru. We did 28 engine conversions last year. Subaru, mainly EJ25s. This one's an EJ253 with a 4-speed auto transmission. Out of all the conversions we did last year, the vast majority went for the 4EAT reverse drive kit, and then we install it obviously. But now that we can offer the RGBs, it may change towards manual, we think. Done suspension work, that's our rear disc brake kit. Big thick MP sway bar, underbelly, radiator, new brakes here, and a whole lot of other work. And yeah, so that's now gassing me out, so I'm going to switch this car off. But that's the other side of the business. Well, it's not the best light under here, but you can see it's painted. We've painted it silver, painted the differential black, so it's come up pretty good considering it's a second-hand frame. Like 90% of this is, or 75% of this is up to here, is all sort of second-hand. You know, 30 to 40 years old or whatever it works out to be. So when we have all these brackets, we'll have every single one of these brackets laser cut and welded to a beautifully fabbed subframe. All this will be, it'll all be, yeah, it'll look $1 million. So don't take too close of notice of that. But yeah, it's all painted, ready to go. In fact, talking about condition, there's a rust hole here. We still need to cut that out, and we'll do a plate on that. But apart from that, it is painted and we're getting closer. That's just showing that the plate has been welded in and the rust hole is now non-existent. And that's it, all painted up. That little rust hole's gone. That's the finished product of the bracing plates. So you can see they're nice and thick through the top here, up through there, got the crush tubes in, got the thread bar all the way through. And what I just wanted to show you, if this is the style of plates we use in the same shape we use in the kit, you'll see that you may not be able to see that on the screen really well, but they are offset with this part being a bit wider on this side. And that's because when you've got the flip diff, it's wider sort of this side as it comes through. So just to give you an explanation of why that looks like that. Well, it is literally like Christmas every single day at the workshop at the moment. It's so good. And I know you guys with project cars can all relate to this, you know, all the parts rocking up to your door and getting ready to fit them, you know, all the excitement, and I'm like a kid in a candy store at the moment. So yeah, we've got the shiny new coolant pipes. The coolant pipes were stuffed on this, and the radiator is too, so we've got a radiator coming. We've got genuine front struts for Syncro. When I say genuine, I mean they're Bilstone obviously, but I mean that you've got to use Syncro struts, not two-wheel drive Vanagon struts, or shocks, because the Syncro ones, which this one is here, it's got the perch or the spring saddle there that's higher, where the spring on a two-wheel drive sits on the arm. And look, the arm's wrong in the two-wheel drive anyway, so regardless you can't use it. But what I'm saying is this stem allows the drive shaft from the differential, which is here, it'll allow it to come out and sneak past this and go straight into your hub. And so on that topic, we've got a new disc here as well. That's a Syncro disc. The reason you need a Syncro disc and not standard Vanagon is because, and look, I know this is quite simple to some people, but I know there's probably a few people watching that don't know a lot about Vanagons or Syncros. So two-wheel drive vehicles or the Volkswagens have the spindle that comes out, like it's a male shaft with the tapered roller bearings set up and a nut. And so that spindle doesn't allow for a CV shaft to go through the back into the hub, which is the splined part. And then the spline there drives the wheel forward. So that's why you need genuine Syncro disc, and you can't use Vanagon parts for that bit. But we can use the two-wheel drive caliper bracket and two-wheel drive caliper on the genuine Syncro upright, or the Syncro knuckle, whatever you would like to call it. And on that topic, we are using a genuine Syncro upright, genuine Syncro lower ball joint, upper arms, and lower arm, if I didn't say that, strut spring. So some of these parts will be remanufactured and available from our website, and others you'll need to try and get from spare parts places or wreckers or dismantlers. But yeah, it's all coming along. So we're putting the subframe up and in, so it all matches up nicely. This particular vehicle's been a bit beat up, so that's a bit wonky there. We can pull that down later, but that's how that sits across the top. We'll put bolts through here, probably 3 I'd say, with cross tubes in that bit. But then around here, what we're going to do is put a gusset from here, triangular gusset up to here. So we'll come from this point up to here and back across just to strengthen that point up. But apart from that, it's looking good and it's all going in. Alright, so that's that gusset welded in. It's going to make that a whole lot stronger. Just trying to make sure we're making this as strong as possible. And that's where the Syncro arm comes out. So this is just purely for our brace, back up to the original 2-wheel drive chassis where the lower control arm usually would come out of the... So it's getting a little bit more exciting. It's starting to look like a motor vehicle again under here. Everything was ripped out, but that side's pretty much in. It's back up, the cradle's bolted back up. We've got this gusset on this side. I showed you the other side, but that's this side now done. That's the plate where the rust hole was. All right, just a quick video showing that the cross tubes are in. This front spare wheel support bracket or bar. When I say spare wheel, the spare wheel hinges up to here. So that's these hinges, where are they? Here. So it's nice and strong, it's super strong. You can see all the angles into that, and that holds the radius rod, so it has to be super strong. So that's a great place to brace the front of the Syncro subframe. We've got 3 bolts going up through there, M12s. They'll be high tensile. These ones aren't at the moment, they're just to dummy it up. And we'll just cut this one down a little bit. We're not sure what we'll do here, whether we'll supply crush tubes in the kit or what we'll do here yet, but either way we'll make sure it's yeah, really strong and durable. This is just a video for the people who asked about the R160 differential. So it does fit, that's the answer to your question, that's the short answer. And for the people who don't know the difference, the R180 differential, which we've been using, it's out of a 2013 WRX, it's an LSD. And this is an open differential, the R160, from a Liberty Impreza. So our flipped covers will sit it all in the right spot. Right, so the left-hand side of the bus is going together in terms of suspension. Look, there's many different ways to do this, and there's heaps of YouTube clips on how to install, you know, look up Syncro, because that's now effectively what you're working on, is just Syncro. So look up Syncro on YouTube and you'll see different things. We find it easier if we compress the spring and install the strut first and then put the arm up under it. But look, there's many different ways to do it, and yeah, as long as it all goes back together, that's the main objective. We've just taken the bottom shock or strut bolt out and then used what we call the apprentice, just a big jack stand, and we've wound it up to the height that is now 465 from the bottom down. And yes, we'll fix that rust hole. From the bottom down, it'll be 465. Now we know where that sits. We can then get our radius rod set up under here, dummy it up, and then we'll work out the angle coming down here, and we'll take you through that. We'll take you through that process now. All right, so that's the standard Syncro radius rod that came with all the parts that I bought from Canberra when I went down to Canberra and bought all these parts. I bought one of these with it. It was never going to fit because, as I've mentioned, the radius rod bracket in a Syncro is part of this subframe, and we didn't want to use that. We wanted it to be easy and more of a bolt-in solution than having people cut all this out and having to unpick it, and it's just a nightmare. So this was never going to work. As you can see, it comes here, like it's just not right. So look, what we're going to do is use the part that we cut out from the genuine 2-wheel drive. This is it. This is out of the T3. That's the standard 2-wheel drive one that we had. We're cutting this part out of the arm. That's what we cut out from the 2-wheel drive. We'll work out where that has to go, somewhere like that, and then you'll see this happen, but we'll then weld something here just to get the angle right, and then we'll CAD draw this up so that it is all one piece. And we'll probably do it that this 2-wheel drive radius rod, see how there's a thread there? We'll probably do it so this, because you can buy these brand new online, we could probably do it. So we have a one-piece section here that stops there. So that will be our piece. And then it'll have a thread in here like this, and then you'll thread the standard two-wheel drive radius rod into our piece. In amongst all that we're doing here with this radius rod, we need to take into account the sway bar link, that link pin there. So there's a few different versions you would have seen, different vehicles. Some are curved, some aren't, some are straight, some are different lengths. So we're just measuring at the moment. There's a 30mm gap on the genuine Syncro we've got out in the car park. There's a 30mm gap between tie rod and sway bar. So we'll probably follow that for now, just as a loose measurement, and that's jacked up still in the right position at driving height. So yeah, we're getting there, but just talking you through what's going through our heads, and we'll see if we can actually get genuine ones of these to suit. If not, we'll just have to make them up. So when I bought all that secondhand Syncro stuff, one of the hubs was completely stuffed. You can see that little ridge there, or the lip, and so the bearing wouldn't have seated properly. So we've gone and had a whole bunch made up. So if anyone needs any at any stage, these will be for sale on our website. I couldn't seem to find any online, but look, someone may have made them, but I just couldn't find them. So we had ours produced, and now we can yeah, get back on the job and install one of these guys, and yeah, get back onto the passenger side and get it together. So that's the wheel hub that we had manufactured, went in perfect, and now we're about to put the disc on and then the brakes. All right, so the way we've gone about this, we ended up getting, with all the Syncro parts that I bought from the guy down in Canberra when I bought the subframe, we got sway bar as well. So we've gone and put the genuine sway bar from a Syncro. So this sway bar here is genuine Syncro with genuine, they've got a slight kick in them. So that's out of a Syncro as well. Syncro bushes. So far this is still the genuine Syncro radius rod that we've cut, because we're trying to work out the radius rod angle. But the cool thing is, you can see that little kick in the bush there, that just fits perfect up into the two-wheel drive Vanagon frame or chassis. So far, and that's a very similar, we're still jacked up with the apprentice holding that at ride height, because we've got the strut or shock undone. So that's at ride height, and that's almost to the millimetre perfect of the genuine Syncro that we've measured, that's sitting on the ground out the workshop, out in the car park. All right, so one of the issues we've faced, one of the issues, we've got many issues here, but one of the issues we've faced with this particular radius rod is when you go to put it up, it's just too long and you don't have enough thread to adjust it. Even if it's in there, you can see it still hits that sway bar link pin. So now we're just up to finding a die. We've got a die nut, and we've worked out with this thread gauge 1.5. Yeah, that's 1.5 pitch. It's a bit off there, but yeah, there you go. There you go, 1.5 pitch thread. And so we're just looking for a die nut now that will run down the whole way and then tap a bit more of this radius rod. So then we've got adjustment there. That'll be a bit of a nightmare, but it's just got to be done. And then we're getting closer on this side. So while the vehicle's on the ground, this is a genuine two-wheel drive Vanagon. Once the vehicle's on the ground, and that's the ride height of the vehicle, say, you can see that there's no gap at the top of the bush there. Like it's, the bush is perpendicular or square to the actual bracket. So that's what we'll do. We'll square the bush up now and tighten the nuts to get it square like that. And then that will give us, naturally, that'll give us the angle that that bar needs to ride at, ride height. And then when you put it on a hoist, obviously this just droops down and there becomes a gap at the top of the bush there. And that's normal, but we want to do everything at ride height, which is why we've undone the bottom of the strut or the shock on the vehicle we're working on, so we can get it to this height and simulate the ride height. So that's what we're working on now. And this is back at the SYNCARU vehicle now. We've got that bush tight, that one tight. When I say tight, it's not super tight, but it's just so that bush is sitting perpendicular or square to that bracket, and then that tells us where that would want to go. So we're not going to come straight out here, it's way too high. We'll give it a bit of a bend down, and then that gives us, yeah, a good idea of what it's got to be. Again, that's still at ride height because this is undone. I know I've said that a fair few times, but I'm just making sure you understand what's happening. And that's, yeah, where we're up to. We gave up on the idea of tapping this down or getting a die nut and creating a thread. We just cut it there. We're going to put the other piece up here and then cut a piece out, weld it back together. And again, this is purely just, we're not going to drive it like that. This is purely just for us to mock it all up so that we get the correct position for the part that we make, which will be here. All right, so we've shortened that piece. That's the bit we cut out of the two-wheel drive arm. We've shortened it, cut it right off. And then that's the wrong angle. So it's not the correct angle, but that's about the angle it's going to sit. That'll come down a tiny bit there, but that'll be pretty much the angle that'll sit, and that's the length, so it doesn't, when you thread this in, the genuine two-wheel drive radius rod, when you thread it into our part, which will be this, it doesn't hit the sway bar link. So what we're going to do here is just curve this a little bit more. Not that it makes any difference to what we're doing, but it makes it look a bit prettier and nicer to work with. So we'll cut that off and grind it up. Okay, so that's our bit, or the bit we're calling our bit, which we cut off the lower control arm of the two-wheel drive Vanagon. This is the radius rod out of the two-wheel drive Vanagon that this came out of as well. It's been cut down. That just screws in as normal. And then we'll put this up in the vehicle and now try and dummy up where it sits. It'll go onto there. We're just going to make up a sleeve now that joins those together to keep it straight. And then we'll work out the height of where this wants to sit. All right, so all that so far has got us to here, which is where we want to be. Sleeve joins these together. We worked out the length for how far we want our part, which our part we're calling this bit here. It'll look similar to this, but a bit bigger profile and higher. The reason this doesn't line up is because the Syncro does sit a 50mm difference in height, so that's why we're having to do this. And this will come down a little bit, probably about there or so. But just to show you, now we're welded in from here down to here, and then we're getting close to being able to send that part off to be CAD drawn up and yeah, and then produced. So that's the sleeve we've welded in purely just to keep that straight. And then, like I said, this needs a bit of a kick there, we believe, like that. Just a bit from what we can work out off the other Syncro we've been looking at. So we'll probably get it about there, and we'll weld a piece in here, and then we can chop that off, and then that piece is done in the sense that, when I say done, not even halfway there, but it's done for what we need to do to communicate to the guys who manufacture it that that's how it's got to be. So when I keep referring to, you know, the Syncro sits 50mm difference, you can see it here. This is what I'm referring to. That's the lower control arm that comes out of the two-wheel drive usually, straight out here. And then that's the lower control arm there, where the Syncro sits in a genuine Syncro. So that is the difference between here and here. And look, it's probably a bit more than 50, but I'll just keep saying, referring to around 50mm. But that's the difference I'm talking about, where I keep referring that it's a different height or it's lower. All right, that's the shape, kind of. It'll look a lot better than that, obviously, but that's what we're going for. And so we've got heaps of adjustment there, so we can change that when we manufacture that part or whatever we decide to do there. But that's pretty much it. It'll work. So all this goes up and down together, so it's not as if this will ever hit the rack or sway bar or vice versa. Now we'll get it out and clean it up and give it a paint. And this is it at full droop, so that's now off. You can see that's loose, it's not really doing anything. And that's the angle it is at full droop, and that's not tight, by the way. But just to show you over here, this is two-wheel drive, but still you'll see that when it is at full droop on a hoist, the wheel's not on the ground, it does create that gap there and it doesn't sit right. So just showing comparisons. All right, so that's our part that we've come up with. You see where we've welded that on. It's not pretty at all, but it lets us know exactly, or it gives us a solid model of what we need to have produced. And then this here will make the thread up this end here shorter, but that just threads in like it would on a normal standard. That's the part. All right, so it's time to assemble the reduction gearboxes. Pretty exciting. We've been waiting a long time for this, so yeah, we're looking forward to getting these in the car. So while these are called reduction gearboxes, I must say that this first set that we're running in the Syncro vehicle are actually 1-to-1. So they're not a reduction at all, these ones. The reason we're doing that and running 1-to-1 is because the front differential, the R180 diff up the front of the vehicle, is a 4.44 ratio, and the gearbox needs to match that. So we didn't want to change the gear ratio at the gearbox. We kept it at 1-to-1 ratio here. So the gearbox is also a 4.44 final drive ratio, so it matches the front diff. Now, in saying that, the reason they're called reduction gearboxes is because we will be, the main use for these will be a reduction gear set. We've got a 0.95 gear set or reduction gear set out at the moment, which takes a 4.44 to 4.86. Now, the reason we started there is because we wanted to put these in the Syncro and give them the hardest life possible. And to start with the Syncro, we needed a 4.86 final drive ratio. So that's why we started with the reduction that we did there. So that explains the gears. We've got 4 angular contact bearings. They're nice and large, 35 width, 35 bore, and 80 OD, 80 millimeter OD. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but they're actually quite large. And so, yeah, they are an angular contact, so they do have a thrust property because a helical cut gear will give off thrust, and that's this way. So we needed a bearing that could handle that. So these bearings are good for that, which is great. We've got the O-ring. This O-ring here sits in this groove, and that becomes the seal. We've got 18 M8 by 40, 12.9 high tensile bolts. So they're super strong. There's 18 of them, so there's no deflection at all in that case, or that's what we're aiming for, and we don't believe there will be. The bore hole there is 35 deep, and then there's another 24 millimeters here from the floor up. So they're super thick, they're super strong, and I don't think we'll have an issue there with deflection. And then this case half is made out of polycarbonate, so that's technically bulletproof glass. And as you can see, that's nice and thick through there as well. And so our thoughts here are that we can set a GoPro up underneath the vehicle and watch the gears run. And so in here, we'll be able to see the backlash. And then through here, that acts as a magnifying glass. And I'm not sure if you can see that in the video, but you'll be able to see the teeth and the gear condition without having to remove the case halves. So a couple of other little things about the case halves. We've got a through thread here and here. We've got 2 dowels, one here and one here. And so right next to the dowels, which are there and there, are the through bolts. So you've got if you get a 100 mil or 4-inch bolt and screw it in, it will then, as you screw the bolts in, it'll drive the case off and split the case halves. So that saves you getting screwdrivers in there and prying and things like that. So yeah, we're really excited to be assembling these for the first time, and we can't wait to get them in the car. Okay, so that's the bearings pressed on the gear. 80 millimeter OD bearing, 110 millimeter OD on the gear, ready to be pressed into the case half. The gears have been cut in such a way that there's a 0.1 millimeter backlash gap.
perfect for your application.